Okay, I think I was not on. Okay. You guys hear me now? Give me a thumbs up if you hear me right now, okay? Just tell me if you hear me. You have no sound. Still no sound? Okay, let's try again. Is there sound now? Still no sound? Really? No sound. Whoa. Okay. Yes, now there's sound? Okay. Okay, now we hear you. Very good. Okay. Michael Yeti. Yeah, great. Now you hear me. Let's start again. Okay. Like this. I want to start a new topic connected with what we've been talking about, traits. And this is called the 6 constant commandments. As I've explained many times before, the word commandment is not exactly the best translation. The word commandment in Hebrew is a mitzvah, and therefore it translates to a commandment. The deeper meaning of the word mitzvah is the word savta, which means connection. And therefore, these are actions that we do that connect the spiritual and the physical world. Okay? Because it's very difficult. Most people say, well, how to become spiritual? They feel by separating from the physical world, they will become spiritual. And the reason why they believe that is because they don't see how an action could be a portal to something spiritual. Okay? Sometimes people see it, kindness, they understand that. But to have actions that connect you to the spiritual realm is what the idea of the mitzvot are. Things that you do practically that will connect you to your deeper self, connect you to God, connect you to the spiritual realm. Those are the word mitzvot. Okay. But there are 6 of these constant things you need. Okay, 6 mindsets that are connections that we need to think about in our entire daily life. And what are those 6? Well, one is to understand there is a God, a creator of the world, to believe and understand and to know a creator. 2, to understand there is no other power. Very, very crucial. Because if a person goes and thinks there's other powers in his life, he has fear, he's lost, he or she are lost. To understand God's oneness, not like a human being that has parts and components. God is not your thing that you can understand. God's oneness is a unity that's beyond, we don't understand what that means. It's oneness in all ways. That's the third of the 6 constant commandments. The 4th and 5th are what I want to talk about tonight. The 4th and 5th are mindsets that, when I say them, they're going to sound wild. Like, why is this a commandment? How do I do this? The 4th and 5th is to love this omnipotent being, and to have awe of him. How do you do that? What does it mean? And people say these words a lot. Hey, love God. What does it mean? What is that? How do we do that? What is this concept? But somehow, ladies and gentlemen, if we get it, if we understand a little bit the emotion and the psychology of feeling in a constant state of love and awe, then we'll be transformed. Now, first of all, we're going to have to also deal with the issue that love and awe are 2 almost opposite emotions. Because when a person feels love, there's a sense of connecting. And when they feel fear of something, they pull back from it. So how do these 2 emotions even work together? They seem to be almost contradictory. So I want to start by giving some ideas of what it means to love God. Because if we ask ourselves, do I feel that? It's like people are all so stuck in our little worlds that when we say it, we're saying words. But if a person felt this love of this infinite being that created them, they'd be different people. So let's understand some of the ways the sages tell us to attain this concept of love. Now, I want to. I mentioned this once in one of the other classes, but I want to share with you not a pleasant story, a very difficult story, but the story of the great sage Rabbi Akiva. He was the greatest of the great, but until the age of 40, he didn't know anything. And then he turned his life around completely. And with the help of his wife, Rachel, who directed him and pushed him, he became the greatest sage. Unfortunately, or fortunately meaning that this was part of the divine plan, this great, great leader was decreed to have a brutal murder at the hands of the Romans during the Roman occupation of Israel. And what they did was they took Rabbi Akiva and they tortured him, as they did what's called the 10 martyrs, 10 of the great sages at the time of the Hadrian persecution. They killed them and they tortured them. So they took combs of iron and they were flaying Rabbi Akiva's skin from him. And they had the Romans let the students be there so they could see this whole gruesome experience. And as they were killing him and torturing him, Rabbi Akiva began to say the Shema, which it says, Shema Yisrael, hear Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And that is the recognition of the oneness of God. And he started to say the Shema. He was preparing himself for this moment of saying the spiritual anthem, which is understanding the oneness of God, no other powers, and connecting to that. And as he's doing it, the students see him doing that, and they say, "What? What? This is how far you're going to go? They're torturing you now, and now you're going to say the Shema?" He said something very strange. He said, "My whole life I've been waiting for this moment, and now I'm not going to say it." Your whole life you're waiting to be tortured? What does that mean? Okay. He says it. He says the Shema. And he then gets to the last word that God is one. And when he says one, he elongates the word. Echad, one. And as he's saying one, his soul leaves him. And the heavenly voice says, praiseworthy is Rabbi Akiva, that his soul left him with one. What does this mean? He was waiting for this his whole life. And that's what he says. And then it's because his soul left him when he said the word one. That was some special thing. What does that mean? Let's understand a second. We live in the physical world. And we have our fears. We have our things we like. And that's the reality we're in. If we could imagine a moment, a greater reality, imagine that your soul is eternal. Imagine you could connect and feel this incredible experience of connection to the ultimate source your whole life. Every moment. In the complete intensity of eternity. Wow. So now we have our lives and we like sushi and we like movie and we like this and we like that. But when we sort of compare the two, the bliss of this spiritual eternal connection, the source of oneness, or sushi, not really much of a comparison. But we live in a world where this is what we experience. We can't imagine beyond that. Rabbi Akiva's whole life was preparing. Every time he would declare there was one God, he would close his eyes, put his hand over his eyes, because sometimes to see, you need to close your eyes. And nothing should disturb him. And then he would meditate on that, and he would imagine that he was ready to leave this whole physical plane to connect to that source of existence. And he practiced it for years. And that's what he meant. His whole life is waiting for this. Because he had prepared his whole life, instead of getting stuck in this world is it when it's not. Because at some point, 80, 90, 120 years, we're going to all face that moment. And some people go kicking and screaming. The sages tell us that the negative people leave in this way like putting a comb through the hair of a sheep. and it gets caught, and the soul can't like leave the body. And the Raisa says it's like pulling a hair out of a cup of milk, just like just pull it right out. The soul has been not getting trapped. It's been sensing something greater. And Rabbi Akiva's whole life prepared for this. And that's what he told the students. He says, okay, this is real now. Beforehand it was practice, because every human being does love to be in this world, and everyone's afraid to leave this world. So Rabbi Akiva was practicing. And now they said to him, now you're going to do it? He says, yes, now is the time. I've been practicing my whole life, and I'm ready to connect to the infinite. What happened then? It says that his soul left when he got to the word one, echad. And the sages tell us, as we know, everything in the holy language matches up not only conceptually, but mathematically too. That's something called gematria, where the numerical values of words represent a connection. So the numerical value of the word echad is 13. Aleph is 1, 8 is the 8th letter, Dal is the 4th letter, so 1, 8, 4, 13. The word for love, ahava, is also 13. Why is love and why is one both 13? Why is the same word? Well, same number. The reason is because the sense of love that a person has is when they feel one with the thing that they are. People naturally love themselves. Why? Because that's me, and they love themselves. When a couple becomes united, the love is because they feel they are one. Okay? When a person feels in himself, this is what I am, there's a sense of love and connection. And that's what we've said many times. I've shared with you the old question, do opposites attract or do similars attract? Well, usually people, when they get married, it's good to have similarities. You could share concepts, you could share stories, you could share experiences. That's all true. But the idea of opposites attracting is like this. The idea, and it's not the opposites. What it is when you take two things that complement each other. The male-female dimension is completely different, but it's a complementary. So meaning, when I'm very hot, I want a cold drink. When I'm very cold, I want a hot drink. Because it completes, I become one with that. And therefore, Rabbi Akiva was saying, when he said echad, one, he understood that where he comes from and where he's going, he is one with the eternal. That's what he understood. And that's why it said, praiseworthy is Rabbi Akiva, whose soul left when he said one, because that was the secret of the love. The commandment to love God means understand where you come from. Okay? Understand where you're going. Understand the root of your existence. But we don't. And why don't we? Because we have a soul and we have a body. And where's your soul? Well, you don't really know. Because you kind of, I don't know. I feel my body. I'm hungry. I haven't had lunch. That's what we feel. And I've explained many times, the soul, only the edge of the soul is what connects to the body. The essence of the soul is beyond and above. As we get more spiritual, we can have more connection to our soul. But as we have very little connection to it, we are a body. So we think, and it's not true. Anyone knows that. Any person you ask, when I say, I'm experiencing you, who am I? It's not my physical body. It's my consciousness, which is the other name for it is the soul. But we don't always feel that way because we're trapped in the experience that we perceive on a visceral level. And that was where Rabbi Akiva understood, who am I? I am a soul that's connected to the divine. And that's where I came from, and that's where I'm going. Good to see you, Shmuel. That's where I came from, that's where I'm going. And this is what the great sages explain is the root of Ahavat Hashem, of this love of God. And I want to take it out of the terminology, but I say it that way, it's hard to feel it and understand it. Most of us, we're stuck in our problems. And you're living in a world where you got problems. I love God. But no, really what you're thinking about is I got this problem, that problem, and why God put me into this situation in the first place. So we don't even feel the love. We feel all the complaints. It's the complaint department. So now the sages tell us, but the root of love is to understand that's your source. That's where you came from. That's where you're going. And if when you shed the body, the soul's eternal and the soul's connected. And to meditate on that is the beginning of experiencing love. And I want to tell you something. If we do that, we're really transformed as far as our daily life. Because the more we're stuck in this, the more we're stuck in very mundane problems. The more we start to understand what we really are, where we come from, where we're going, then you come out of these problems and you start to be able to experience that feeling. That's one way the sages tell us to experience love. Now, they then say, then meditate on the greatness of God, meaning start looking at the world. Take a few minutes a day and say, wow, look at these mountains, look at these trees. If I'm connected to that and I'm one with that, then, and how great that is, that's joy. I'll feel tremendous. Meaning, if a person feels they're connected, but they don't understand, they don't understand of God, a little kid, when you say, oh, a little kid, you're connected to God. Well, he thinks God is whatever he thinks he is. He has a very, very small mind, so he's not able to understand these concepts. So the general experience, understanding that we're one with God. But the deeper then job is to go and to start to look at the world and have understanding. And there's the two ways the sages talk about. Maimonides says one way is to do it through learning of the Torah, through God's wisdom that he gave us, to see some of the incredible, endless wisdom. That will wake you up to get an understanding of you're connected to this. What is that? And the second way is to look at the world. Look at the world. The world is the reflection of God's creation. If you look, you could start to see some of the wisdom. You start to see how amazing. And then you understand what you're connected to. But any hippie can say they are connected with the divine. Yeah, anyone can say that. Anyone can say that. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure the question. Yeah, please, Steve, elaborate your question. Anyone can say that. But the question is that do we feel it? Do we see it? Do we live like it? And here maybe what Steve is hinting at is that there's a tremendous danger when you feel, oh, I already know, and God and I are buddies, and we have this thing where everything I say is true because I'm feeling it. I'm going to answer Steve's question in one second, a little bit deeper also. The second way that the Hasidic masters talk about it, I think it's just very important, this idea of love. Steve, good question. I'll get to it in a second. The second way to talk about love is this other idea the sages tell us, which in our world is going to sound like even crazier, to focus on how much God loves us. And thereby, there's a principle, it says in Proverbs, just like water reflects one face to another, so too hearts reflect one to the other. If you want to know how to get someone to like you, start to like them. You'll see there'll be an immediate change. I remember once I had a student who was giving his first public class, and he asked me what I think he should do as far as a class. I gave him different ideas, and then he went to a friend of mine, another rabbi, and he asked him, and my friend gave the greatest answer. He said, "Think before you go into the class how much you love these people. Get into their shoes." That was the key. So the other idea the sages tell us is now the idea of thinking that, but how much God loves us? Well, how do you find that out? Well, it's written in the Torah if you know how to read it properly. So that's one way, and to see it in your life, that you got to work on, because most people unfortunately see all the problems in their world and they don't see that God loves them. But if you could start to, both through the Torah's teachings, where you see how strongly it's stated, as well as through really focusing on the things in your life that are positive in that way, then hopefully you could feel that, and then it'll be a reflection back the other way. Now, these are some of the six concepts. So one of them is to start feeling love. Now, Steve asked a very important question. How can you trust your feelings? Well, that's really a very, very good question. because your feelings definitely do mislead you, which is why your head is above your heart. The reason why your head's above your heart is because the emotions that you feel, which your heart does pump up to your brain and gives it the energy, at the same time, if you don't direct yourself to what you should properly want, your heart will fool you. Okay, so what I want to answer on this point of Steve is really what I mentioned earlier, that there is today we're talking about the fourth and fifth of these 6 constant commandments. The fifth one is to have awe of God. Now, I want to say this in this context because it sort of does relate to what Steve said also. How do you have love and fear? I'd say awe because it's a better word, but contained in awe is a sense of nullification. And the sense of love, when I feel I love someone, there's an I, okay? Because I love this person. This person makes me feel good. I want to connect to them. So in one sense, the feeling of love is very much connected to a feeling of existence, of me. Awe or fear is a nullification, right? If I see a person, I see a very strong guy, and I say, "Oh my gosh, I'm the king, and I'm going to make him my bodyguard. So I like him. I'll take him." If I'm afraid of him, then I'm nullified before this person. So when I feel love, usually I don't feel fear. Fear, I don't feel love. They usually don't go together so well. And this really a little bit touches on a little what Steve's saying. Steve's question is much greater. We have to talk about it in much more detail. But one of the understandings here is that if you don't balance this experience of love of God with the awe, you're in deep trouble. You're in deep trouble. Because once you cross over the line and you say, okay, wow, I feel so close to God, and then what happens? Anything that I think or I feel is going to be right. No, a person has to go. The only way to go forward is then by awe, then by realizing, whoa, you look out in the stars at night and you say, what am I? You think about the idea, which the Kabbalists tell us, that God's oneness, nothing in the world, everything is nullified before him. And not there. We don't know what that means because we experience existence. But when you start to get the awe and to realize you come from a source and you had no existence and you have no existence other than that, that creates a sense of awe. And people lack awe. It's not a very, big, a concept that people like to feel. But without that, as Steve has asked, we're in big trouble. Because what happens is, as the person goes and starts to feel his feelings, and he starts, oh, I love God, the next thing that happens is he makes it his own world. His own world. I heard this from one of the great sages of Israel. He said an amazing thing. It stuck with me to this day. He said that, it says that when Abraham brought in the guests in the story in the Torah, in the Bible, he made them wash their feet. Why? Because in those days, these nomads would worship the dust of their feet. Now that sounds like a crazy type of idolatry. There's weird idolatries in the world, but that sounds like the nuttiest thing in the world. What were they doing? So it's one great sage, Moshe Shapiro Zatzal. He said like this. He said that they were at a place where they thought, wherever we go, whatever we do, that's what God wants us to do. And that's what it meant. They worshiped the dust of their feet. Well, I feel this, and therefore it must be what God wants. That was their mindset. And there are, unfortunately, people who do that today and do very, very terrible things because they just say, well, I feel I'm tuned in, and therefore I feel I want this. That's a major problem. Awe is actually, in one sense, the solution. Because a person, when they actually realize that they have no existence other than the fact that God created them from nothing and pumps in existence to them at every moment, nothing. I'll share this Kabbalistic idea with you, where Kabbalists say that really, this is very, very deep. The Kabbalists say that when God puts existence into us and creates some ex nihilo, something from nothing, so if we really saw, we'd really realize we have nothing. That's what we are. But God conceals it, and we have a sense of ourselves. But if we really understood, we'd see that we're not. We are, if you do a piece of clay and you made it into a clay thing and you breathe life into it, then you realize it was nothing. More than that, that's not even our comparison. Because a clay thing, you make a table, you made a table. God is pumping in existence to us every second, otherwise we're not there. So when a person gets awe and they realize, whoa, I exist because I come from the source, and otherwise I'm not here. And if you have a hard time doing that in the conceptual level, the more mystical ideas we talked about, just look at the world. Just look at the world. Go out in a starry night and for a second realize, whoa. Now, don't do it in the way people talk about it, which is that you're nothing. That's wrong. Because it gives a negative experience. In other words, when you look and you realize how low you are in the sense that God is breathing life into you, don't go to depression, therefore, and say, well, it's all irrelevant because I'm nothing in this world and who really cares? That's a mistake. In other words, this is the mistake the Greeks made. The Greeks made this amazing mistake, which was philosophically a problem. The Greeks wanted to say, well, God is so lofty, what does he care about what happens to you? Therefore, he created the world, but he let it be. He's not involved in it. And there are people who say the same thing today. It's wrong for many, many reasons, but philosophically it's wrong also because it's completely it lacks the depth of understanding. If God's wisdom is not your wisdom, and therefore his knowledge is not our knowledge. It's not like a person learns, math. So now he learns calculus. Now he's a new person. God doesn't know more things. He's infinite. It's a nonsensical statement. We don't understand God's knowledge in any way. That's what the great philosopher Maimonides says. He is the knowledge, he is the knowing, and he's the knower. We can't understand it. So what? So the Greeks to say, well, it's too much, God to know what a little ant is doing, what a little human being is doing. It's foolish. Yes, God's knowledge is not harder for him to know than every single creation in the world. And therefore, he is involved in the world. That's why the story of the Exodus of Egypt is so crucial to the creation. It was God's calling card to show, I've created the world, I have complete mastery of the world, and I'm involved in the world. Okay? So when you look at a starry night, I do want us all to have awe and say, I'm like nothing. I nullify myself. But don't get depressed and add philosophies that are not true. The love and awe is the gas and the brakes. And you cannot get more love until you get awe. If you don't get awe, then the love is going to be off, as Steve has asked. You have to first realize, and that's the check. The check on your emotional system is when you realize, I don't know, and I am a finite created being but I am connected to the source. That's my existence. And when you have that awe, then you can look at the world and say, wow, look how great it is. And I feel love. And as you feel love, then you got to hit the brakes a little bit and say, as you're getting closer, slow down. God's not your buddy. You're not equals. That's why you can't make a picture of God as a human being, because what happens is that then you'll understand as if he's human. God's not human. God's infinite. You can't understand. And that's why we have such a strong discussion about idolatry, because any limitation of God in our concept is a problem. Then he becomes me, and becomes you, and therefore there's no limitation. You can't do that. You can't limit. Because once you limit, it's not God anymore. It's something else. So the awe has to happen and nullify ourselves. And then the going, the expression to want to connect to that. And once you connect to that, you come to a new level where the brakes have to be hit and realize, whoa. And then when you realize, this is only from that, you say, but wow, but God, that's my source. That's where I'm going. That's where I'm going. That's my kingdom. That's where I'm going back from. And he loves me. And therefore, wow, he really does. And then you go forward. And that's the process. And that is 2 of the 6 constant commandments that if we get that mindset, we're different people. We're like walking around, yeah. And as we said before, not just like in a freaky way. It's very grounded because the awe will always pull you back to know your place. And then you can go forward. That's the idea. I've had some questions. So Steve said we are God's dream. If he wakes up, we cease to exist. I mean, that's kind of a way that people want to say it. It's not God's in a dream. That would obviously not be real. But you're hitting on a very deep concept, which I mentioned actually last week, which is that God is putting us into existence. I don't want to get too into this deep idea. I'll throw it out because it was mentioned a little bit here. When I speak, so I take the words and I put them into different phrasing and I express it now. When those words are in my mind, then they're really one in its source. And before I even thought of them as words, those thoughts were totally connected with myself. When it says God said the world, he was bringing out into a reality that we could experience and see, and experience, because that's what speaking is. Otherwise, in my inner world, you don't know. He was bringing into existence the world as he wanted it. But it only exists because that's what he wants at every moment. It has no other existence. And that's the point that I think we're talking about, which is a very, very deep point. Okay, I'm going to take some questions. Deep stuff tonight, but I think deep stuff is good. But work on it. Let's work on it. Let's work on getting this idea of getting out of our stuck physical, thinking in a deeper way, getting that love and getting the awe and balancing that in our constant state of existence. Okay, wonderful, guys. Okay, great speaking to you. And we will see you next Monday night here. And I will also be doing Wednesday night with Nativ. Tuesday night, I have some other groups, but be in touch and we will discuss. Oh, Mickey, Rabbi, isn't the feeling of awe, Mickey, fix the last word up. What's the last word, Mickey? You missed the last word. My good friend Mickey is asking a question, but I think that last word. Rabbi, isn't the feeling of awe all encompassing? I'm not sure the word you're using there. But the feeling of awe, I guess what Mickey was saying, in a certain sense, yes. I'm assuming what Mickey said, intangible. I wouldn't have thought it was the word. Yeah, all feelings are intangible. Yeah. I'll add Betty's question in a second. But all feelings are intangible. Feelings are intangible. Awe is one of the feelings that a person has. Now, you want to start, and this is where it's kind of people misunderstand it. They talk about fear. Fear is considered people to do things, and this is actually important. The lower levels of awe, the higher levels of awe is called yiras harombos, like awe of the grandeur. Then there's different levels of fear or awe. The lowest level is called pachad. It's called fear. And so I asked you a question. Is it good to do something because you are afraid of the negative consequences? And the answer is that it's a low level, but it's a necessary level. It's a necessary level. I mean, if there's not going to be As it says in the sages, if there was not a police, if there was not a government that kept people in line, whoa, people would swallow each other up. This is dangerous. So the lowest level of doing things is out of fear. Okay? So if you don't steal because you're afraid you can go to jail, that's a low level. Obviously, a higher level is you believe it's wrong, and really a high level of it is fear, where it's turning into awe. I'm just going to give it to you in a simple, practical way. I realize it's your property, and therefore I am afraid to encroach on what's yours. I have even awe to respect what is yours. So the lowest level is I don't steal because of fear. Higher levels are different. So when you ask me, is awe intangible? I don't think all things are intangible, but awe is its lowest level is called fear. We don't want to do things just because we're afraid. If you're doing the right thing and you're prevented from doing the wrong thing because of fear, that's at least level 1. But then as human beings develop, they do things that are right, and they're afraid to do things that are wrong for deeper levels. Then we come to a higher level, something like awe. Very good. And as Betty asked me, the 6 constant mitzvot, mindsets are belief in God, no other power, the oneness of God, and always in oneness needs to be explained because it's a very deep idea. God is not composite in one in all ways possible. 4 is love of God. 5 is awe. And 6 is not to stray after our hearts and our eyes. It means to be loyal, not to go after things that we know are wrong. And that really touches back on Steve's question earlier, which is that people need to really watch what they want, because the way the people have feelings for what they want, that strays everything. That is the 6th of the constant commandments, or constant connections we'll call it, which is not to stray after false ideas of your heart and eyes, licentious or false things that would stray you away from what is true. Okay, guys, it was awesome. Good to speak to you, and I'll see you next Wednesday at this location, and we'll be talking about other classes coming up soon. All the best. Bye.